Hello, good morning, and welcome to this Dawn Busters Taste Challenge. December 15th, 2018. And here we are with an interesting combination, I think, from 1962, Rich and Rare, introduced in 1962, now owned by Sazerac. This is 80 proof. It's Canadian. Now, I like how these, well, we'll describe that in a moment. Rich and Rare versus Rich and Rare Reserve from about 2010. I can't pin it down if it was 2010 or 2011, but no earlier than 2010 and no later than 2011. This I do know. In that pretty bottle, which the Whiskey Scout showed me was not only used for this whiskey. Distilled in Canada in small batches and aged patiently in hand-picked oak barrels, Rich and Rare Reserve delivers a distinctive smoothness and unparalleled elegance, but they don't tell you how long it's aged. And there's, at the same time, they introduced a Royal Canadian small batch, which I've never seen. I bought Royal Canadian over there in Marrero, Louisiana. Hadn't seen it anywhere else. Imported and bottled in the USA by Sazerac Company, Frankfort, Kentucky, which is the Buffalo Trace Distillery. All right, so nice looking bottle. I bought this for an extraordinary price, $9.99 plus tax. Normally in your area, you'll find it for about $12, but they do have sales. So they have some common features. They have the insignia, which is the same for both. The insignia is the R&R shield with a crown above it signifying the Canadian government, which is a constitutional monarchy, a queen, Queen Elizabeth II. Most Americans don't know anything about Canada's government. And some Americans seem to be under the impression that Canada is part of the United States. Just talk to Americans about Canada, and they seem very confused about it. They think Toronto is an American city. And it's strange that Americans don't know a lot about geography, and I guess maybe most people in the world don't know a lot about geography. I don't know. I taught geography for years as a teacher, and most students didn't seem to know much. We always have incidences of situations where people are sure that they don't know. Like they had an incident last week where was it a driver's license official, I believe, I believe it was in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, where somebody from New Mexico wanted to get a Washington, D.C. license plate, driver's license, I think it was. And then the lady was saying, well, you can't get that because you have to have a passport. You're from a foreign country, New Mexico. You might be here illegally or something like that. And she was saying, what are you talking about? And it was the director of the license bureau. And then somebody else backed her up. That's right, lady. You have to have a passport to get a DC license plate, a driver's license. She said, I'm from New Mexico. And then finally somebody else in the bureau resolved it by saying, here's a map of the United States. See, that's a state, New Mexico. Not Mexico, it's New Mexico. And then somehow they went along with it, but they were like, well, that's on you now if we get in trouble. And they're like, no, you're not going to get in trouble because it's a state. All right. Hey, Ron, which level of education have you taught? Everything from 6th grade up to college. Freshman courses, American history and world history in college, Southeastern Louisiana University and Southern University of New Orleans. All right, so anyway, it's kind of interesting. I like to do the beer, wine, and liquor reviews mainly for the history and the brands of it. And that's why when some people say, you're this, you're that, you're wrong, you know, how can you say that about them? I just kind of laugh that off because I say, I'm not really here for all that drama, psychodrama stuff. I just like the brands, studying the brands and tasting them and all of that. So it's sort of like I can't engage all that kind of stuff because that's not really my interest area. Or, you know, to have take sides in different factional disputes between macro, micro. I mean, you've noticed that over 8 years. It's not my interest. I don't care if it's macro, middle crow, or micro. I just like to study the brand. So maybe it's a different, it is a review channel, but it's a different perspective, which kind of causes some controversy with people that watch and they don't understand the perspective, but I'm explaining that now. Maybe I'll talk about that more. So here we got the shield, R&R, and then the crown, Canadian government, and then you have the unicorn and the horse. Okay, so that's common in Canada. I got to get to the right screen. That David Hrunek asked me that question about the education. So there is that. Try to avoid the glare. It's becoming daylight out there, but it's very overcast. It's about 50 degrees, but it's a terrible chill from this humidity. And I noticed that yesterday, the humidity was just so grim and it made it feel cold. It really wasn't cold. It was like 60, but it felt like it was 40. It felt bad. And it's going to be like that today, overcast and bad. And people will talk about England. Oh, it's cloudy all the time. It's drizzly. It's rainy. I said, it's kind of like here. So there's that tan. Is that tan? No. Ecro. I don't know what you call that color. Like a yellowish white. I'm not a color expert. But then they always focus Canadian whiskey. That's number 2 with natural flavors. We'll maybe discuss that, what those are. It's not artificial flavoring. 80 proof, bottled by Sazerac Company, Frankfort, Kentucky. So both of these are they're coming from Canada. And then they're being bottled at Buffalo Trace. Now, the Food Quig was saying he thinks that they're actually being blended and aged down there. I don't know. I don't know about that. How would we know that? Sazerac won't tell you. But it is produced in Canada, and just to a large extent. And that's it. Now over here, now the bottle used to be different. When it first came out in 1962, it was owned by a different company, Gooderhams, I think. Gooderhams. They got bought out, I think, by Fleischmann's, and then Fleischmann got bought out by Sazerac. I can't keep up with all these transfers. But it used to be a square bottle, like with a neck, and then it was like I'm trying to think, what is that similar to today? It's like a flask shape, but it was big, 750. It was strange. But then here's that, and this one is sort of like that, but this has rounded edges, and it has the filigree, the barley growing up the 4 corners of it. Really nice looking thing. And it's got the Rich and Rare Reserve. It's not a sheet, a plastic sheet that's adhered to it, like you would see. It's the actual print on the glass. It's like painted some kind of way on the glass, like paint, paint. All right, so you get the same crown in R&R, unicorn and horse, but then this one's the Reserve. It's so special. And they only have the word Canadian once there. Canadian whiskey, a blend, naturally. But it doesn't say anything about, there's the cap, fancy, what they're, what brand they're trying to evoke there. I think we can all figure that out without even mentioning it. Now, some people commented that they thought that other brand with that kind of cap was actually not as good a value as this, because that other brand is about $23 a bottle. And I've heard people say, yeah, they preferred this because Well, hello, what happened to the tape? They preferred this because it was a lot cheaper and they thought it tasted better. So, hey, you can't argue with that. If something's cheaper and it tastes better, I need to get on to reviewing that other brand. About time, huh? The most popular Canadian whiskey in the world. And here I am doing some obscure stuff like Canadian Limited. Oh, boy, if I could grab that tape, this would really help this. No, where's the tape? Oh, there it is. Oh, come on. Trying to figure out what just happened here. Okay, let's try this again. I want this to be accurate. This is turning out to be very bad. I can't grab it. All right, bear with me for just a moment. All right, I think that'll work. Thought I had it. All right, so let's go. 1962. It's pretty popular. It's cheap. It's like $7.59 at Walmart. And then this is, I got it for $9.99, but I see it everywhere on sale for $10.99. Okay, so let's go with Rich and Rare first. You know, it's so rare, you can get it at Walmart. That's how rare it is. You say, I'm going to court, I'm suing. Well, good luck. You won't win because that's one of those meaningless marketing terms that has no legal definition. Rare, premium, reserve, select, handmade, like a certain handmade vodka, which is handmade in a factory with machines. Somebody was going to sue for that. I'm suing. That's not handmade. It's made on an assembly line. The judge said, no, your case has no merit. First of all, you weren't damaged by it. You can't prove a tort. Secondly, handmade has no legal meaning. Could mean they pressed a button. So that was their hand pressing a button. See, so it's like people tried to sue Molson Coors because they said they got tricked. They thought Blue Moon was a craft beer and they felt defrauded. And the judge, I think, got up out of the chair and physically chased the person out the courtroom. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but that's how prejudiced the judge was against that case. Because they're saying, no, you know, first of all, you were probably hired by some other company to do that. And secondly, the word craft beer or craft whiskey has no legal term. It's a marketing term. There's no legal definition. Now, if somebody was selling corn whiskey as bourbon and they added color to it without aging it, okay, now you have a tort because that's a legal term. Bourbon is a legal term. It has to be. Canadian blended whiskey is a legal term. Okay, so although there's some controversy about that, well, in my own mind, because the Canadian regulations conflict with the American regulations. But the Canadian regulations take precedence because the US government says clearly under the laws and regulations of Canada, not the laws and regulations of the USA. So that's interesting. All right. Oh, I got to mix them up. Now, John and Neely did a blind taste test, and he said he couldn't tell them apart. Like, he didn't see where it was that different. He couldn't. He didn't think the $3 extra was justified. He liked them both to an extent, but he didn't see where the price was justified. And I'm going to try to find out right here and now. So we're talking about 10, 17, 40, 1758, $17.58 plus tax for these two bottles together. 1,500 milliliters of whiskey. Is that a good value? Well, that is in the eyes of the beholder or the taster. People ask me this at least once a week on the internet. They're asking me, is this a good beer value? I mean, I cannot answer that question. I can say, well, to me it is, or to me it isn't, but you have to decide that. I'm not a guru. I can't decide who, even a guru can't, although they might make you pay them money so that you think they can tell you things. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you will decide if it's a value or not. Do I think buying CBS for $23 a bottle is a value? No, I don't. So I'm not going to buy it. Is it a wonderful beer? I'm sure it is. Everybody's always talking about how great it is. But to me, I just don't want to pay $23 for a 25.4 ounce bottle of beer that I'm going to drink in one day and then it's gone. Psst. I'll just imagine that it's good. I'm not disparaging it. I'm not putting that down. I'm not saying people shouldn't buy it. If it was $89 a bottle and you wanted to buy it, then and you enjoyed it, then it's a good value for you. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, appearance. Well, we got a problem here. I can feel that rumple at the bottom, and that is not good because that's telling me that it's, but I don't remember which it was anyway. I guess it's not a problem. But I don't like those kind of things that can throw. This one's darker and there's more of it. Yeah, Rich and Rare Reserve. Let's see here. I want to be accurate. I don't want to just be saying, yeah, who cares? Doesn't matter. It does matter to me. Is it very important, these things? Well, no. Obviously, they're not important. They're entertaining, perhaps. But to get on the internet and watch somebody talk about beer, wine, or liquor and do a review, and to think that's important, I'm sorry, it isn't. Might be fun, might be enjoyable. It isn't important. Mm-mm-mm. All right, so sorry about that. So we can tell that the Rich and Rare Reserve is darker. It is quite darker. It's amber, and this one is straw gold. I put too much in here anyway, so you might say you're just using an excuse to drink more. First of all, I don't need an excuse to drink more. I just would do it if I wanted to. I don't have to explain. You know what I mean? Like, I could just drink whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, for whatever reason. So I have to be careful. If I glance at it, it could be a problem. The aroma, I think the aroma for the Rich and Rare is going to be a little more of that exotic. It's got the natural flavors. Now you say, oh, no, not flavor. It's not what you're thinking. Like, it's real flavors. And the Canadian regulations are pretty specific. It can be additives up to something like 9%, some point something. There's some kind of qualification, but it's like, let's say about 9%. And it can be any combination. There's no, they can add bourbon to it within that 9%. Wines, it has to be specific. It has to be barrel aged wines, I believe. And it doesn't matter really what kind of wine, but there's like specifics of how the wine is treated. And then it has to be aged spirits, and they have to be aged in wooden vessels, barrels, you know. casks. And it can be bourbon, American bourbon, brandy, rum, and I don't know if it can be others or if that's just 3 examples they gave. I have to look it up. I would gladly look it up for you. Although you could probably look it up just by, if you get on Yahoo or Google and you type in Canadian alcohol regulations, it'll come right up. It'll be canada.gov/ministry of making sure the alcohol's done right, whatever it's called. And it'll give you the page and you can read it. It's very clearly written. It's kind of like the Tax and Trade Bureau guideline for alcoholic beverages from the United States government, Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and whatever that is called. They always keep changing the name, but it's very clear. It's contradictory as it concerns imports, but it's clear. See what I'm saying? Clear but contradictory. Morning from Virginia, says Colin Trout. Hey, morning to you. All right, so here we go. I got to be very careful. I think the Rich and Rare will win, but I'm not too confident in that. Will I be able to tell them apart? I don't think the Rich and Rare Reserve has the flavorings added, but once again, they don't have to disclose it anyhow. You can request a certificate of disclosure, but they don't have to disclose it. And so I think Sazerac does that simply as a courtesy. As a courtesy. They don't have to say it. Okay. This one smells very, it's not buttery. It's, oh yeah, pancake syrup. Like maple, that maple concoction syrup. You know what I'm talking about? Like what's it called? Country Kitchen, I think. It's part of that Aunt Jemima family of syrup. And it's like a combination of various syrups. They try to kind of mimic maple, but none of it's maple, but they try to mimic it with all this super sweet stuff, including high fructose corn syrup, I might add, which is a grim product in my estimation. Now, I'm not trying to offend all the high fructose corn syrup fans out there. So the viewers who are very attached to that, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm saying in my estimation, I think it's a grim product. I don't like it. If you're into it, you can just slurp it up like many of my colleagues do. And you can fatten up like them too, because they seem to grow bigger and bigger with that high fructose corn syrup. Even though a lot of what they're slurping down all day long is diet drinks, because that's going to help you lose weight. Since it's diet, instead of drinking 2 regular, you drink 12 diet. See, and you can lose weight. Or so their thinking goes. And if you saw these mini pyramid salads that they eat, I'll say mini pyramid because it looks like a replica of the pyramids, or that Devil's Tower that they were making on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure you're undermining any benefit you would have gotten from salad with the incredible volume you're about to consume. But this is very mild, and it has, yes, the grain alcohol undercurrent, because Canadian whiskey, right? It's like American blended whiskey. They use grain alcohol, or as Rich and Black Velvet said, as they let the cat out the bag, it's grain neutral spirits. That's what they call it, which is what it is. It's column still corn whiskey. Okay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So this is very mild, and you can pick up some of those sweet, sugary flavors. So, and it's almost like rum cake, which Sazerac has described with the Hartley brandy, drizzled rum cake. And this has some Hartley brandy-esque funky monkey, silly Billy Bananarama notes, if you know what I mean. It's strange. Like, it doesn't smell like normal whiskey. It smells like a very peculiar concoction product. Well, let's check out this funny bunny over here. Oh, yeah, this is even more funny, strange confectionery sugar. Yeah, like the confectioner sugar. It's really like super powdery. It's almost, it's, if you ever get confectioner sugar, it's so powdery, it's almost become liquefied. It's almost like a liquid when you feel it in the bag, that polypropylene bag. It's a very strange item. And this has that note on the nose. Is there a coconut? I don't know. Yeah, there's a corn grain alcohol undercurrent. Well, why wouldn't there be? There's going to be that. That's what 80% of it is, more than likely. Now you might say, you always say that with blended Scotch whiskey too. What's your trip, man? What's your hang up, man? It's neither a trip nor a hang up. That's what the undercurrent is, because that's what the base is. Get blended Scotch whiskey, it's probably all 80% grain neutral spirits. Oh, I'm sorry, column still corn grain whiskey, but it's the same old thing. All right. Odorless, tasteless, colorless. It's the base. The flavor's coming from the single malt, okay? With Canadian whiskey, your flavor's coming from your wheat, your rye whiskey, your malt whiskey, and these up to 9%, whatever that percentage is, melange of wine and other exotic spirits. So think about the endless possibilities, though, that you could make with all those flavorings and colorings, those other distilled spirits. It is fascinating what you could do with that little tweak here and tweak there. Well, this smells fine enough. If one would want to drink cake frosting, does kind of smell like cake frosting. Duncan Hines. No. There's some of that. We talked about Genesee cream ale, and I remarked to somebody once, and she agreed. I said, doesn't it taste sort of like Duncan Hines cream cheese frosting? She had to admit that it did. Now, this one is a sharper, this one is a much sharper aroma, a much more grain aroma. One would say whiskey aroma. So on this basis of aroma only, I think this is the Rich and Rare Reserve at this point, because it tastes less of the flavored thing. I don't see why you want to make a mixed drink with this stuff. There's already a mixed drink. You know what I mean? Like, why make a mixed drink out of essentially a mixed drink? It's whiskey legally. Okay. I think it smells good though myself, but I like exotic, strange things. So I think the regular versus the reserve is very similar, says Outstanding Cruise over there in Georgia. I think that is perhaps not the case though, because they don't look the same. They don't smell the same. They smell similar in some respects, but I'm picking up very serious differences here, I have to say to you. Well, it's time for the taste challenge, so let's go. I'm very pleased I bought both. I have no regrets. So if you're asking me, is this worth buying and trying, I would say without any hesitation, yes, yes. And I'm going to follow that up with yes. Very pleasant. Okay, so the predominant flavor is the grain alcohol. Let's not kid ourselves. It's almost like you have a metaphysical transportation and ethereal transportation to the interior plains of Alberta and Manitoba and Saskatchewan. I swear, it's like you're in the middle of a field of grain. It's So strong in that respect. But heck, what the hell? I mean, excuse my language. Don't blame me, blame the whiskey. That's what it is. So it's grain. It's distilled. It's processed. They bottle it. You drink it. Okay. So I don't want to get too hung up on that, too obsessed with it. All right. Well, well, well. Hi, old friend. Whoa. Well, I got some lights going off in my sensory experience at this particular moment as I walk through the halls of karma. Because it's like little lights going off, like rum, yeah, brandy, yeah, bourbon, yeah, wood-aged wine, yeah. And I swear to you, maybe even gin, but that may not be part of the regulation. You might say you can't have gin. No, I'm not saying you can have it. I can look those up, but I get some type of juniper berry extrapolation, but maybe that's some kind of dry or blending sherry that's making it taste like that. Blending sherry. Now, if it's coming from Sazerac, what would that be? It's a great question. And I'm not person to answer that question because I don't know the answer and don't even have the faintest idea what the answer would be. All right. But it's a question to ask. You'll never get the answer from them. You might find out through a third party. You see here, it's very much straightforward, just whiskey. It's like, hey, this is Canada. It's straight old whiskey. Now, if you can't handle it, you're not a man. You know, be a man. You know, it's a very macho approach. It's grain whiskey. It's grain fields. It's wheat. It's rye. It's peppery. It's a little intense, a little bitey. Here's what you need if you want to warm up in the winter. So that's that approach. Okay. Now over here, yes, it's grain, but you get all these exotic flavors. So it's a more feminine, the way I look at it, almost like a perfume department. Like there's the man over there. He's wearing the flannel shirt. I'm going in the hunting department. I'm going to look at those bow and arrows. And she said, okay, dear, I'm going to look at perfume. Will you do that? And then we'll meet up and we'll go to the cafeteria and eat lunch. I want some of their cornbread and I want that custard. Please let them have custard. So then they go and break off and then she does it. So this is that more perfume shop at the department store. Do they even have those things anymore? What happened to? I'm talking about like my experience at the mall, like, you know, the shopping mall in 1981, you know, that we have those kind of experiences. And then the man will say, look, I bought a members only jacket. And then the wife will say, that looks so good. I love the way it plays against your bushy mustache and your sexy permed hair. All right. Let's go get in our 1981 Mustang Cobra with its 255 V8 and only automatic transmission, no manual offered with that engine in 1981. And let's drive home. Okay, but anyway, so I think this is the Canadian, I almost say Canadian Limited. Oh, what's going on, baby? That's coming over later, man. I think this is the Rich and Rare Standard. This is the Mustang. Whoa, 2.3 liter, 4-speed, overdrive, hatchback, black, air conditioned, AM/FM radio, stereo. That's it. This is the Mustang 81 Mustang Cobra. You know what I mean? This has got the graphics, the hood graphics. It's macho. It's got the resonators, got those tailpipes. It's got no power. It's all, but this does have power, unlike that. This has power like the 1982 Mustang GT when they brought the high output engine back and the free flowing exhaust. And then the horsepower wars took off, which they still are going on now at this present particular time. So this is a macho product that can back it up. It's got the horsepower. All right. I really like that. I really like that. It's a straightforward approach. It's not flavored, funky monkey, like I said earlier. It's, although there is some raisin. What? Yes. Raisin bread. Okay. And but it's more of a standard, say, okay, here it is, straightforward, take it or leave it, but this is what you want, maybe, but this is what you're going to get, even if you don't want it. Okay. And this one's more trying to say, okay, you paid $7.59 at Walmart, and actually it's $7.49. I'm sorry. The Canadian Limited was $7.42, and I noticed that this is $7.49. I don't know why there's a 7-cent difference, but it's always been consistent there. It's very strange what that 7 cents per bottle would, why that would be, but it is. Okay, so and think about, well, why such a strange price, right? $7.42. So this has much more of the pancake syrup, the nougat, like in a Three Musketeers bar, of the dates, like if you eat the dates in the bag and all those things. So I think, now which one's a winner? Well, now you see, this is where it gets very difficult because it's a personal preference issue. So how do you say, well, some people prefer that and some people prefer that, so there's a winner? That's very difficult. If you prefer the more grain oriented with a little rye spice to cut the grain and give it a little character, and maybe more representative of what you get with that other product at $22 a bottle, $23 a bottle with the same type of cap, this would be, yeah, for you. If you want something here that it's probably inferior, and that's why it's being masked with the flavorings, which at the end of the day, as they like to say on TV a lot, it wouldn't really matter, you see, because if it's being masked with the flavors and it comes across in the totality that it's an enjoyable product, like I'm saying, like almost like a mixed drink before you make a mixed drink, it would be fine. So is it worth the extra $3? I don't know about that. I think it is. I think it is. I think I have to disagree with John and Neely, and I think it is worth it because it's probably something that could stand alone better without the flavorings. So yeah, if you had this without the flavorings, it might just, it'd just be so bite. It would have such a terrible bite and just such harsh grain alcohol. It might, you would think it was, oh, this is some kind of cheap vodka. What is this? Dobra. I've never had Dobra. I'm just thinking, oh, okay, but I have had Crown Rus. Okay, so what is this? Crown Rus vodka? What's going on over here? So, or Taka, which I've had. So you have to be careful about those things. All right, I'm revisiting the Reserve right now, and as I taste it again, I will say it has more of a vanilla taste and sweeter. By the way, I wore a black members only jacket in middle school. Laugh out loud. All right. All right. I like to think about those things. Okay. So here we go. I hope this is rich and rare Reserve, and I hope that's rich and rare, because if it's not, I've just basically destroyed my whole premise, which ain't nothing new. Thankfully, I was sweating that out a little bit. This is the rich and rare Reserve. So I called it within 5 seconds. I'm proud of myself in a way because that fast, that quickly, I was telling them apart. So that worked out kind of nice. So they're not the same, and they're pretty distinguishable from each other. And I'm kind of happy about them. Here's where you get into the controversy, where you start saying, people will literally ask me questions like this: what's better, bourbon or Canadian whiskey? Now, how could a person ever answer a question such as that? It's in the eye of the drinker, right? I know people that love bourbon. I know people that love Canadian blended whiskey. They don't, but interestingly, the people I know dislike the other one. Like the guy I know who loves Canadian blended whiskey can't stand bourbon. And the guys I know that love bourbon, if you even say Canadian whiskey, they laugh out loud and just roll their eyes and say, "Oh Lord, what are we dealing with here? This imbecile." But now that is a bad attitude. You see, that kind of undermines the whole bourbon experience, because when you start having those pretentious attitudes and you start looking down on people that like other things, you don't help your cause. It doesn't attract people to bourbon. They say, no, I don't really want to be part of that outlook. That's kind of like the craft beer snobbery that turns people away. It's sad though, because if people didn't have that attitude, it would, who knows, craft beer might be much bigger today. It's big, certainly, but it might be much bigger if that sort of counterproductive attitude didn't exist. But I guess that'll always be the case. Outstanding Crew says, great review. Thank you. I appreciate it. I thought it was a great review too. I was very excited about it, and I was very interested in it. I want to look up one thing real fast though. And then that's it. We're done. So let's see. Best selling Canadian whiskey. I think Statica. Yeah, here we go. The 20 most popular whiskey brands in the U.S. Oh, okay. Well, they're not breaking it down to Canadian. Oh well. Here's all the whiskey brands sold in the United States. According to IRI Worldwide, this is a market research firm that measures off-premise sales like grocery stores, liquor stores, and convenience stores. Huh. Interesting. There's a Bacardi advertisement showing up right here, which I plan to try. Bacardi, all right, Bacardi Gold. And they're suggesting you mix it with Martini and Rossi. Makes sense because they own it. Number 20, Buchanan Scotch whiskey. Number 19, Rich and Rare. Okay, I thought that's why I went to check. Rich and Rare is the number 19 best-selling whiskey in the United States as of this current year. Yeah. How you like that? It says, what's in a name? In the case of Rich and Rare, not much. Nevertheless, it nabs the top spot on the list. Kessler, number 18. Woodford Reserve, number 17. Thank you, Sonia, for that nearly full bottle of Woodford Reserve. Dewar Scotch, famous. Never had it. Known around the world. Canadian Club. Well, of course, I've had this. It says, claiming to be the only Canadian whiskey that's blended before aging in white oak barrels. Gets its flavor from rye malt, and barley malt atop a base whiskey made with corn. In other words, grain neutral spirit. So, Canadian Club. Canadian Mist is number 14. Golly, Canadian Mist outsells Canadian Club. I guess people like whiskey that tastes like nothing. I shouldn't say that. It's probably me. It probably has a lot of intricate flavors that I was too busy being a jerk to pick up. It's remained among the ranks for its relaxed, casual branding and fair oak and vanilla notes. I would call it like almost undetectable fair oak and vanilla notes, but I need to revisit it. I shouldn't be hating on it. Southern Comfort American whiskey. That's not really a whiskey, okay? It's telling you right there, a whiskey-based liqueur. So why is it in this lineup? Okay. Bullet. Yeah. Wild Turkey. Yeah. Johnny Walker Scotch. They're showing the blue label. Yeah. That makes up about 0.001% of their sales, since it's $250 a bottle. Johnny Walker's number 10. Black Velvet number 9. Okay. How about that? Evan Williams, number 8. Seagram's 7 Crown, number 7, which really, to me, is the best blended American whiskey that I've found so far. It says an American icon. There's no doubt about that. Number 7. Number 6, Maker's Mark. Never had it, but I hear about it every day of my life. Jameson, number 5. Yes, the best-selling Irish whiskey in the world. 90% of it is exported. Jim Beam, number 4. Makes sense. Fireball, number 3. Fireball. Despite the fact that Fireball is not technically a whiskey. That's right, it's a liqueur. It's number 3. Most people think it's a whiskey. I had to correct it. Well, you know, it's not really. They didn't really care. They weren't interested in my technical facts. Fireball, wildly popular. Why? I do not know. Why was some, but it ain't me to judge. Crown Royal, number 2. Well, that makes sense. It's number 1 selling whiskey around here in Louisiana. I know that for sure. It just sells like crazy around here. And then Jack Daniels is number 1. Well, I think we all knew that before I ever mentioned it. Oh, well, so interesting, so very interesting. And tomorrow morning, at the same time, we're going to do Rich and Rare versus Canadian Limited. I think it'll be almost identical. It'll be shorter, I hope. I think it'll be very similar to this. I think they'll be easily discernible, and I think that it'll be a personal preference issue to a large extent, and it'll be the same, macho versus feminine and all of these things. I think it'll be the same, but what time will tell. Maker's Mark. Oh, he says, make Maker's Mark your next review. You will love it. It's incredible. I've never heard anything negative about it. That's for sure. I can't make it my next one, though, because I've got, oh, man, if you look in this cabinet, you would just be appalled. You either admire me or think very bad things about me. If you looked in that cabinet, I swear you would either be impressed or appalled. There would be no middle ground. And if you saw what I'm talking about, you would realize what I mean. I'm not joking. Now, David with the beard, he's seen it. He looked in the cabinet and he said, "What's going on in here?" I said, "You're one to talk with that beer museum you got. Thanks for watching this video production."